Welcome to the Lifelong Rivals Sports Podcast. I'm Zach Kaufman here with Ryan D'Amico, bringing you another week of football.
Yeah, another week of football, another week of college football, NFL football. And like I said last week, man, this is peak. This is the peak time of the year right now. I mean, the weather's getting cold. We're getting deep into football here. You know, playoff formats are starting to take shape here, and you're really starting to see kind of what teams are going to be there going into the playoffs, and what teams are kind of starting to fall off a little bit and really need to kind of kick it up a notch. So. Yeah, this is a perfect time of year for me, man, because you start to separate. These teams are starting to separate themselves, which is fantastic.
It's definitely an exciting time of year, and you missed one thing there in the intro. Also a big time of the year for middle school football, as my team just finished undefeated. We got our championship game coming up on Thursday, so I'm excited for that. I know the guys are excited for that. Not quite on the level of the NFL, but still exciting for me here.
Nah, dude, that's really exciting. Yeah, and like I said before, congrats to you. Congrats to those guys. Anytime. Look, I don't care if it's Little League. I don't care if it's, middle school football, high school football. I don't care what it is. Anytime you win a championship, I mean, that's a big deal. You work hard for that kind of stuff. I mean, any sort of competitive sports you play, I mean, you're putting in the time, you're putting in the effort, the practices, the games. I mean, that's a big deal. So, yeah, props to you and props to your guys. And I saw that video, and I even texted you and said something about it. I saw that video on your Instagram of that wideout going up and over that defensive back and making a sick grab. I'm trying to get in contact with Randy Moss to get that on Monday Night Countdown, where he has this You Got Moss segment, which is actually one of the better segments ESPN does over there. And I'm trying to get that on there for you, but I'm having some trouble getting it out there to those guys.
That'd be great. I know he'd love that. He's made a couple plays like that in the end zone. We had a couple 2-point conversions like that. I think a touchdown, and we had one game where a long third down conversion, he went up and over the guy just like that. He's been nice and consistent awesome. Bringing those kind of passes down this year.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure he'll continue to progress and continue to get better and better. And that's definitely the one cool thing about coaching. I had a brief coaching experience. I had to cut it short just because of work and stuff. But that was always one cool thing is, seeing the kids progress and seeing them kind of get better and better. And that's obviously one thing I'm sure you look forward to as well. So, props to you, man, and keep doing what you're doing because you're doing a good thing down there.
I certainly appreciate it, man. I'm having fun with it.
Absolutely. So, so as we do, Zach, every week here on this show, we'll start things off with college football. Like we said last week, the initial college football playoff rankings got released, and this week was the first week with those in play. As we look at some of the bigger games from this weekend. I think one you have to start out with is we'll start with the local team up here by me in PA and Penn State. They traveled to East Lansing and battled Michigan State. A game that kicked off at 12 o'clock and didn't end until around 6 o'clock. Was because of a 3.5 hour severe weather delay that took place halfway through the second quarter. Then they resumed, and then for some reason they had a normal length halftime. It's like these kids just sat around for 3.5 hours. Now you're going to give them a halftime? Like that, I didn't understand that. But they picked up. Penn State was leading 14-7 at the half. They picked things up, and Michigan State fought back and came back to win. They got a late field goal with 4 seconds left, 34-yard field goal to win the game 27-24. And Penn State, now losers of 2 in a row, one time was ranked second, as high as second in the country. Now they're just another one of those 2 lost teams. And Michigan State, On the other hand, they control their own destiny now in the Big Ten East, where they have a big game this weekend with Ohio State. It's at Ohio State. They win that game. They set themselves up really nice to go to the Big Ten championship and possibly get into the college football playoffs. So Michigan State, one of those teams that they're one of those patented teams. It's just like you wonder how they continue to win, but you give them credit at the same time because, look, looking at them, watching them play, looking at them on paper, they don't look anything special to me. But look, they've beaten Michigan, they've beaten Penn State now, so you got to give them credit. So that was the big 12 o'clock game.
And this is back-to-back weeks that Penn State's blown a fourth quarter lead. I know we talked about Ohio State before. They had the lead there in the fourth quarter. This week against Michigan State, it was only 3 points. But once again, blowing the lead. And we talked about last time how they just got away from what they were doing well. They weren't giving the ball to Saquon Barkley. I didn't get a chance to watch this game at all. Is that the same thing that happened once again?
A little bit. I'll tell you what. I mean, it's no secret that when Barkley's not involved and when Barkley kind of gets taken out of the game, they don't have success, which is partly the reason why I don't think Penn State is going to be – I mean, they'll be okay next year, but I don't think they're going to be near as good as they are this year is because they're going to lose Saquon Barkley. But you look, I mean, Trace McSorley threw the ball 47 times, Zach. I mean, that's not a recipe for success. I mean, Saquon Barkley only rushed the ball 14 times. I mean, this was a rainy, damp, cold weather game that was set up for a Saquon Barkley kind of game to feed the ball to him 25, 30 times, let him do what he does, and they didn't do that. And lo and behold, look what happened. They end up losing the game. So, look, Penn State, their season's pretty much finished now. The two teams that are ahead of them in the Big Ten East, Ohio State and Michigan State, they lost to. So their season's done. They pretty much can't get to the Big Ten title game, and any aspirations of a national championship that Penn State fans thought of 2 weeks ago, that's out the window. So I'll be honest, I'm happy. If Michigan's not going to go to the national championship or win the Big Ten, I don't want Penn State to win. So I was pretty happy with that game, Zach, to be honest with you. So and what almost was a certainty 2 weeks ago is not so much a certainty anymore, and that is Saquon Barkley winning the Heisman Trophy. Two kind of just average games in the biggest games of the year so far against Ohio State and against Michigan State. So, things are just kind of plummeting pretty fast for Penn State right now.
Is there anyone specific that stands out to you as a Heisman candidate that would move ahead of him at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a guy actually and a team we're going to talk about next. We look at Bedlam, the Bedlam matchup, they call it, which pins Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State every year. And this was a big matchup. This was a really big matchup. 5 versus 11, the winner really kind of in the driver's seat of the Big 12 there and really kind of just has everything in front of him now. And it was a shootout, as a lot of people thought it would be. It was a big-time shootout, 62-52. Oklahoma does prevail, though. Baker Mayfield throws for 598 yards and five touchdowns. Now, he had 2 picks, and the one pick he threw late, a lot of people, myself included, I thought that was going to just kind of screw him and screw his team. But Oklahoma State ends up not converting, not getting a touchdown there late after the interception. They didn't convert, so it didn't hurt them. And that makes the stat line look a little better for Baker Mayfield. I mean, anytime you almost hang 600 yards on a team, that's ridiculous. And I think what's crazier about it is he only did it on 24 completions. Like, you think someone threw for 600 yards, I mean, that's going to be like into the 30s, low 40s completions. I mean, that's 24 completions. He was 24-36, Zach, 598 yards, and those 5 touchdowns. I mean, you remember seeing a stat line like that recently?
I can't think of anything. And throughout this entire game, there's just silly stats all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to rushing yards, Oklahoma, they had Rodney Anderson with 111 and a touchdown. Trey Sermon had 81 and a touchdown. Justice Hill for Oklahoma State had 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's just crazy. And then we've got Marquise Brown, 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. Man, two guys over 100 yards there for Oklahoma State as well, with James Washington, Tyron Johnson, and Marcel Aitman as well had 2 touchdowns there. In addition to just a wild stat line, something you'd definitely expect straight out of a video game.
Yeah, for sure. And Baker Mayfield is that guy. You asked me who overtook Saquon Barkley. Baker Mayfield's in the driver's seat now. Baker Mayfield is doing some nutty things. And I always tell the story. So he's a senior, okay? So this would have been 4 years ago. I remember it was opening night of college football season. Texas Tech was playing – I don't remember who they were playing. It's irrelevant. But Baker Mayfield was the starting quarterback that night. He was a freshman. And I watched the first half of that game because I was going somewhere. I was going out that night with friends or whatever. And I remember watching, I'm like, man, this kid's a baller. And they were saying how he was like a walk-on and everything. And Cliff Kingsbury gave him a shot. And I'm thinking to myself, this kid's got stones. Like, he's a baller. He's running around making plays, doing the patented Baker Mayfield, stuff that he always does. And it's funny to look back now and to that night and now see where Baker Mayfield is now, to possibly winning a Heisman Trophy and possibly getting his team into the college football playoff and playing for a national championship. So it's funny where things can go in 4 short years, and Baker Mayfield is just killing it. And there's talent all over in this game. I mean, you talked about Aitman, the wide receiver for Oklahoma State. That's a kid that I think going forward, a lot of people talk about James Washington, rightfully so. Got hurt in this game, actually, which was a big loss for Oklahoma State. Part of the reason I don't think they had the firepower to come back. But you look at Marcel Aitman. He's a senior, okay? He's 6'4". This kid's 6'4", about 220 pounds. He's a big dude. This kid is going to find himself on an NFL roster next year. And I think he could really help a team with that big body, particularly down in the red zone. So, and Justice Hill, you talked about, another very good running back. So this game had fireworks and a lot of it, Zach. Very fun game to watch. I actually watched a good bit of this game. Actually, I pretty much watched the whole thing. And it lived up to the hype for sure.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like it. I know that jumped out immediately checking the scores, seeing that 62-52 final score. You don't see that very often at all at any level.
No, you don't. You really don't. Not at all. And I mean, shootouts like that are very few and far in between. But hey, in the Big 12, defense is kind of optional. So there's a reason why they, Baker Mayfield passed from a 600 yards. So tip your hat to Baker, tip your hat to Oklahoma. They find a way to win. Oklahoma State, they're pretty much done now. So next game, real quickly, I have 2 more. One I just want to touch on briefly. Clemson, they just continue to win, continue to find ways to win. They're 8-1, 4th-ranked team in the country. Look, they hold off NC State. NC State, who, I mean, they put up 31 points on this Clemson defense. A Clemson defense that is in pretty high regard in college football this year. I mean, that's where a lot of people thought that this team would carry them, really. I mean, with the offense, not really sure what they were going to get with Kelly Bryant and whatnot. He's been hurt. I mean, this is an NC State team that, look, like I said, hung up 31 points, but at the same time, at home, you're up 21-14 at one point in this game, and then you just let kind of Clemson just take off, score what they score. I think they scored 17 unanswered points. You can't let that happen, especially at home, especially when you got big goals in front of you. This would have been a huge win for NC State to grab, to put on that resume. But ultimately, they fall short. And tip your hat to Clemson. They continue to find a way to win, and will be interesting to see with Clemson going forward. This should pretty much put Clemson into the ACC title game, which which they most likely will be facing. The next team we're going to talk about, the last matchup we're going to talk about, Zach, is Miami. Miami's another team that I'm like waiting for them to lose, and they just will not lose. Now, I didn't think they would lose on Saturday night. I didn't, because I don't particularly think Vatek's anything special. Solid team, sure, but I don't think they're anything great. They went into Miami, and look, 28-10 doesn't sound that great, but this was a blowout. I mean, this was more like 44-10 than 28-10. Miami just really, really kind of dominated this game from start to finish. Vatek had some chances early, and they just couldn't do it. Turn the ball over 4 times. Anytime you turn the ball over 4 times, really going to be difficult to win. They forced 3 turnovers as well, though, for Miami. Couldn't capitalize on those turnovers, though. That's the big thing, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Miami could convert. Vatek simply could not. So Miami, they go to 8-0. They get a big win. This sets them up now to really kind of run the table in the ACC and get to the ACC championship game against Clemson. So, Vatek, they could drop to 7-2. They're pretty much finished in the ACC. So, like I said in the top of the program here, Zach, like in the NFL, same with college football, you're starting to get those teams that are separating themselves, and we're really seeing who's going to kind of be there at the end. And it looks like Miami and Clemson are going to be 2 of those teams that are going to be fighting it out to try to get into the college football playoff. Tough loss for your hometown squad there, your Vatek Hokies.
That's true. And Miami was able to overcome some mistakes there. Their quarterback, Malik Rosier, he threw 3 interceptions there, completed less than 50% of his throws, but they were still able to win at 28-10 pretty significantly there, even with those mistakes.
Yeah, did it really, really, like you said, Malik Rosier had his worst game of the season, his worst game. I mean, 3 interceptions, not going to get the job done. But at the same time, I like to pick on Miami, but at the same time, I mean, that's kind of what good teams do, and I guess you have to label them as a good team as much as I don't want to. I mean, they're a good team, sure, but I guess I should say that's what great teams do, is when your quarterback doesn't have a good game, other guys step up and make plays, and Travis Homer really stepped up, had 95 rushing yards and a touchdown. Rosier, although struggled through the air, added in 84 rushing yards and a touchdown. So they were able to do it on the ground and get the job done there. So props to Miami. That sets up a really big game this weekend, the biggest game of the weekend coming up. Like we always do, we'll fast forward and preview this weekend's games, marquee matchups. Like there was last week, there's a lot of ranked matchups last week. There's a fair amount of ranked matchups this week, none bigger than the 8 o'clock kickoff in Coral Gables down in Miami. Notre Dame goes to Miami in it's out of conference game, but this is still a big game. I mean, this is kind of one of them games where let's see where each team is at. You know, more importantly, I think Miami. Let's see if Miami is for real. I mean, if Miami goes into this game and beats Notre Dame and beats them like 7 to 10 points, I mean, that's going to really show me something here. So that's obviously a game that I'm really looking forward to. That's the highlight game of the weekend. The game I referenced a little bit earlier, Michigan State travels to Ohio State. That's a 12 o'clock kickoff, Zach. That game's huge, a huge game. Somehow Ohio State is a 16-point favorite in that game. That is one of the more perplexing lines I've seen in a long time. That seems too easy to just take Michigan State. I mean, that just seems way too easy, like one of those Vegas trap lines. But that just seems too weird to me. So that's obviously a big one. And then another game that I'm really interested in, involving a team that really can throw a monkey wrench into this whole college football playoff thing, is Auburn. Auburn plays Georgia and Alabama yet this year. So while no one's talking about Auburn right now, they control their own destiny. I mean, they have everything in front of them. Do I think they can beat Georgia and beat Alabama, both of them? let alone knock off one of them? Absolutely not. But, I mean, stranger things have happened. So that's a big game this week. Georgia travels to Auburn. So that's obviously a big game as well. And look,
and actually, Auburn was one of the games I did catch this past weekend. I was very impressed with their running back, Kerryon Johnson. He had one particular play that it wasn't any kind of extreme highlight play. I doubt you'll see it on many like highlight films, but coming out of the backfield on a pass, the pass was behind him, just reached back, grabbed it with one hand, took off upfield, got himself a first down. It was a very it wasn't an important point in the game or anything like that, but it was very smooth just how he looked in the passing game, catching the ball on the ground. He had 145 yards rushing and a touchdown, averaged 5 yards per carry. He looked very, very, very solid. I was impressed watching his performance this past weekend.
Yeah, he's a good player, and they were actually missing one of their other big-time running backs, Cameron Petway, who had to sit out that game with an injury. I don't know if you've ever seen him play, Zach. He's built like a linebacker, and I'm not kidding. He's 6 feet, 240 pounds. He's a running back coming at you downhill. Watching him run is really scary. So, Auburn, look, they play Georgia this week. In 2 weeks, they play Alabama in the Iron Bowl. Both of those games are at home, too. So that's huge. So Auburn's a team to keep an eye on. If they can somehow, some way knock off Georgia and Alabama, they're going to be in the college football playoff for sure. So that's what we're looking at going into next week. One other game I didn't mention that I don't know how I didn't mention, but I want to mention it because it put a big smile on my face, was the Iowa Hawkeyes absolutely destroying Ohio State 55-24. That game was beautiful. I mean, all you heard was after 2 weeks ago when Ohio State beat Penn State, Ohio State's going to college football playoff. JT Barrett's going to win the Heisman. This and that. I mean, they're in the driver's seat now. How quickly that changed, okay? How quickly all that changed. Guess what, Ohio State? You're not going to the college football playoff. Guess what, JT Barrett? You're not winning the Heisman Trophy. You just threw 4 interceptions at Iowa. And guess what? That defense just let Iowa, who is not by any means an offensive juggernaut, hang up 55 points on your ass.
5 touchdowns through the air there.
For Nathan Stanley. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. And Iowa continues to give teams fits. I mean, if you're a Big Ten team, do not schedule a road game at Iowa in November. It fucks everything up. We saw it on Saturday night. I saw it firsthand last year with Michigan when they were the third-ranked team in the country, undefeated. They go to a night game at Iowa and they lose and their season's screwed. You can't do it. They almost did it to Penn State earlier in the year when Penn State scored on the last play of the season, the last play of the game. So, I mean, if you think about that, theoretically, Penn State should all but have 3 losses. And Iowa, they get that win. I mean, damn, they're sitting really pretty. So, I love it. I personally love it. I would much rather see Michigan State in the Big Ten title game than either Penn State or Ohio State. This puts a big, big smile on my face, Zach. And this was a really good football weekend for me last weekend. Very good. My teams win. All the teams I despise lose for the most part. So a very good weekend indeed. So that pretty much wraps up what I have for college football. But as we're speaking, the college football rankings are being released. I'll tell you what, I can probably get that up here for you. They did get released. The rankings now, we'll just real quickly backtrack here through the top 10. Penn State and Ohio State fall to 14th and 13th. Going through the top 10, Auburn's 10th, Washington 9, Wisconsin 8, Miami 7, okay, TCU 6, Oklahoma 5. Those are the 2 on the outside looking in. The top 4 remain the same because all 4 win. No reason to shuffle them around. Georgia, Bama, Notre Dame, Clemson. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's a top 10 there. I was very surprised you didn't go to the Ohio State game earlier too.
But I don't know. I don't know how I forgot about it, man. I really don't know how I forgot about it. Somehow it slipped my mind. I have no idea how, but it did. It slipped my mind, and a lot to talk about. But yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lifelong Rivals Sports Podcast. We really appreciate it. We've changed some things up based on some of the feedback we've received, so we'd love to continue hearing your feedback. As we continue to build this platform with our podcast, it's very helpful to us if you can share it with the people you know that you think would be interested. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a great week.